Okay, the Dean Legge Show for the week of Georgia's game against Arkansas. Um, I think more than anything else is the week that Todd Gurley was suspended by the university for allegedly taking money, or at least the university hasn't exactly officially said um, why Todd has been suspended. It's been allegations of breaking NCAA rules or the bylaws of the NCAA. And it's 11:30 on Wednesday night, which is a little later than I normally tape these. But right now, after a lot of speculative things that have been written, um, my opinion, there's been a lot of speculative things that have been written that have turned out not to be true or turned out to be a little bit strong for what has turned out to be the case. Um, my opinion is that Todd will play, and that's based on talking with a lot of different people. That's also really basically based on based on my understanding of the NCAA rules, of the bylaws, and you know, unless this thing is beyond what has been reported, which is an autograph signing thing, and unless there's something we are unaware of at this time, I expect Todd to play. I think he could play. I do not expect him to play against Arkansas. I do expect him to play from that point forward, which will be the Florida game. I'm a little unclear, although I have asked. I am a little unclear as to if Georgia has turned their information over to the NCAA. A lot of crazy things have happened this week. I mean, first of all, tonight Mark Richt either misspoke or something. He said he felt like he would know by Friday whether Todd was going to be able to go to Arkansas or not. That would lead you to believe that Georgia has given the information to the NCAA and we're moving forward, and everybody will know by Friday. Then the university came back and cleaned that up, saying that he misspoke and that they don't know. They're not, excuse me, not that they don't know, but that they don't anticipate knowing necessarily. So, I mean, Mark may have misspoke. That's certainly possible. Um, he may also know something that we are not aware of, and he shouldn't have said something. I mean, that's possible too. So, uh, I I'll say this about Mark. Um, is odd that it's not odd for him to misspeak. It is odd for him to be untruthful. Um, he will typically just leave something aside and not say it. So it just it wouldn't be abnormal to know before Friday. I don't think it would be crazy to know what's going on Thursday. We'll see. Now, Jack Bowerly's case, who is the women's and men's swimming and diving coach at Georgia, he's up at the NCAA today, Thursday. And so those two things are separate. The Bowerly thing has been going on for 9 months, 10 or 11 months, whatever it's been. It's been a long time. So that was scheduled a long time ago. I mean, obviously, I think Georgia is on the way or is already there at the NCAA's headquarters. So could they be talking about the Todd thing? Yes, they could. But in my discussions with current and former compliance people at high level SEC etc. schools, Division I schools, um, everything that could be everything in Todd's case should and probably will be handled electronically. So it's not like Georgia has to go up to. I think they're in Kansas City now, or excuse me, Indianapolis. It's not like they got to go to Indianapolis to find out what's going on. It's all they can ask for an expedited process and just take it from there. The key thing is very simple. Did Todd admit to, or is there proof of Todd accepting $400 or less? Or is there proof, or did he admit to taking $401 or more? If it's more than 400, if it's $401 or more, then that means he certainly is not playing against Arkansas because that's what's in the bylaws for the NCAA. If it's 400 or less, magically, it would be a 1-game suspension, and he would play against Arkansas. My gut tells me it's going to be 2 games. That's something someone else told me too that is close to Todd, but is not necessarily close to Georgia's investigative people. So you got to take that at with a grain of salt. I think the mistake the media makes a lot of times, or certainly not the mistake the media makes. This mistake fans make is that they hear something good and they assume they want it to be true. So they look at every single thing and they want it to be true so bad that they'll believe it. And that happens. That happens a fair amount. And I think that there's the cat as if on cue. I think as a reporter, you have to be careful. I mean, as a reporter, you have to be careful what you regurgitate, even in what we were hearing type things. And so that's why I've been really careful. I feel like I learned my lesson. I've gotten one thing wrong in 15 years, and that was an NCAA related matter. And boy, yes, it's not a lot of fun being wrong. I'll tell you that right now. And you got to know how you became wrong, and you don't want to make those mistakes twice. So for me, I'm only going to report what I know to be fact. And frankly, in this entire thing, there have not been tons and tons of things that we can accurately report. Let me just review just real quick, and I'll get on to the Arkansas game. We don't know for a fact, or at least, it has been reported, but Georgia has not confirmed why Todd is being suspended. It has been reported, but no one has confirmed that Todd will miss a second game. It has been reported that he could be out for the entire season. I do not believe that to be the case. I think if that were the case, you'd be talking about him missing because of things beyond what has been reported in the media. I do not believe that there is anything that proves, I do not believe that there is credible information that Georgia could act on as it relates to anything outside of that autograph situation. And then there's been a lot of people who have said that this ruling is going to come down earlier this week. There was a guy who said to me, I'm not saying these people are bad people, but was repeatedly saying, we're going to hear on Wednesday, we're going to hear on Wednesday. It's, Wednesday, unless it's coming out in the next 20 minutes, Wednesday's come and gone. So I just think you got to be careful with things. And it's not easy. I think the fans don't understand that what is alleged that Todd has done goes against the bylaws, strictly speaking. Georgia's a member of the NCAA. Because it's a member of the NCAA and the SEC, it has to abide by those rules. What Florida State does, what Texas A&M did, what Auburn did, they're irrelevant. I know that sounds crazy, but each school can interpret the rules however they want. Georgia, and no one has said this to me, Georgia, you can tell, simply is not interested in forfeiting any game, period. So they are not going to stick Todd on the field. If Todd had played last week and Georgia had won, which they won anyway, they would have forfeited that game, period, because he was ineligible. So the question is, how quick will this thing get wrapped up? I had one person tell me, don't hold your breath. I had another person say, I think they're going to drag it out until Florida, so there's no confusion at all, and then they'll be able to. And then I've had a lot of push that this is going to happen on Thursday or Friday. I don't know. I don't know that anybody knows. So I think that's something to be very careful about. That the Georgia plane was flying to Indianapolis is basically irrelevant for the Todd situation. Of course, they're going to talk up there while they're up there about that. But, I mean, it's possible Georgia basically already knows what. I mean, obviously, I think is very likely that Georgia knows what they already sent up there. I mean, obviously, if they sent it up there, they already know what they sent up there. The way I understand it it is going to be difficult for the NCAA to do anything other than accept what Georgia has sent, simply because that's what happens. However, the NCAA has the right to circle back and double check things, and it may not be right now. It could be in 5 weeks. It could be in 5 months. But you'd better be right, because then you're risking institutional control. That's when people get on probation, like death penalty type stuff. Of course, death penalty is melodramatic, but you get the point. I mean, we're talking about multiple year, because you're at that stage, you're not being truthful to the governing body, and that's what gets people in trouble. It's not. It wouldn't have been that Todd would have taken the $400. $400 by the bylaw is $100, is a 1-game suspension. You don't want to risk institutional control for a 1 or 2 game, playing a kid like that. Florida State, I'm going to tell you right now, if Florida State plays Jameis Winston on Saturday night, they are unquestionably risking a forfeiture in that game. And that's just all there is to it. Because if Todd signed 500 articles, Jameis Winston signed 950, it is nearly impossible that he didn't get paid for that stuff. I mean, it just, maybe he did it out of the kindness of his heart for 4 hours to the same person, and that person did not pay him. Fine. Florida State people, keep the emails. Don't bother blowing me up. You know in your heart, it is hard to believe that he didn't get paid for that stuff. Fine. You're saying he didn't? Fine. You're crazy. Because they've already suspended him once for non-NCAA stuff. Just basically they suspended Winston for being an idiot. In this case, it's actually much worse than being an idiot. Now he has allegedly broken rules. So, compliance departments don't want to get involved. That's the last thing I want to do is get involved. But, they may get involved in this one. And I mean, if I were Florida State, I would unquestionably be checking this out. And they're doing the right thing. Question is anybody on the academic side of things, the president and board of trustees going to do anything? But this isn't about Florida State. This is about Georgia. We've got a couple of questions because I knew I would spend at least half the time on the Todd Gurley thing, and I did. Let's see, Dean Legge show questions. We've got a couple. Actually, we've got a few. Let's get started. Oh, UGA Dog Forever loves this stuff, man. I'll tell you right now. Well, actually, HM Wood asked, not looking for you to report anything, just looking at Legge's crystal ball and tell me how I see this playing out. Well, it is kind of like what I said earlier. I do expect Todd to play again. My best guess is that he'll play against Florida. I do not expect him to play against Arkansas. He could. And all that would mean would be that the only thing that he's either admitted to or there's proof of is that he took $400 or less. My guess is it's more than that. So I do not anticipate him playing against Arkansas. However, I do anticipate him playing against Florida. There's nothing guaranteed. There's no slam dunk thing in this thing. It's too confusing. The only person that knows is Todd. And, Todd can say whatever he wants to say to people who are not in that room. So that's why it can get confusing. How do I anticipate the offensive line faring against Arkansas? The Hogs have only allowed 1 sack against the quick defensive ends. Georgia's offensive line allowed only 1 sack against Missouri's quick defensive ends. However, they didn't get much of a push for Nick Chubb. With the way Missouri played, let me see. Are they still? I think Missouri still is. They actually dropped a little bit. They are now 3rd in the SEC after the game with Georgia with 20 sacks a game. So they were held well underneath their average the other day. Arkansas is tied for 13th of 14 teams with sacks. They've only had 10 the entire year. So, in other words, Missouri is double as good at rushing the passer as Arkansas was or is currently. So, let's look at Arkansas's situation, okay? they are definitely playing better than they did last year. They are still winless. So that's kind of an issue after a while. I mean, we heard the same thing about Tennessee, and I, Tennessee still hasn't won a conference game this year. When you look at Arkansas' situation, they are average to the bottom in the four major statistical categories. They are 14th in rushing defense. That's average. That's literally 50 percentile. They are 12th against the pass. Well, they shouldn't concern themselves too much about that. They're ninth in total defense. Their issue is they're 12th in the conference in scoring defense. Now, I don't doubt that they play slightly better at home, but Little Rock is only, I mean, it is definitely home for the Hogs. It's not their, it's not Fayetteville though, so it's a little different. It's a little bit like Atlanta, Georgia playing Atlanta at the Dome. The Hogs are allowing. This is to me kind of the issue. They're allowing 127 yards rushing. That's seventh in the conference. They're allowing 4 points. They're allowing an average of 4 yards a carry, which is actually about, by my math, 10th in the league. So people are throwing on them, but when they run, they are running effectively. I mean, 4 yards, and that's basically setting up 3rd and 2 every single time. Now we know that's not what reality is, but they are ninth in the conference in total defense. They're allowing about 70 yards more a game than Georgia. Now I will point out that they played Texas A&M and Texas Tech, who are both pass heavy and therefore yard heavy teams. So some of it is that. But scoring defense, no matter what you're playing, you can try and keep people out of the end zone. Scoring defense, the Hogs are 12th. They're allowing about 24 points a game. There are two really bad teams in terms of scoring defense, Vanderbilt and South Carolina. Both those teams, I think, have a combined 7 losses in the conference. So it's not a surprise that they're at the bottom. But of the sort of legitimate teams, if I hate to be that way, Arkansas allows the most points of anyone else besides those two. Vandy's allowing 34, and the Cox are allowing 35. So those two teams are allowing 10 or more than the Hogs are. So, I mean, at the same time, too, what you do want to look and see, how is Arkansas scoring? Who are they scoring? Who are they scoring against? Yada yada yada. I mean, that's an important thing to keep track of as well. I mean, everybody's going to go on what they did against the Hogs last week. Against Bama last week.
Applebee's let the fans put their favorite dishes on the famous 2 for.
ESPN is an easy site to get to, but these ads are awful. The Hogs scored 73 against Nicholls State. They scored 52 against Northern Illinois. Other than that, they've been relatively tame. They scored a pile against Texas Tech. In the SEC, they've only scored over 25 points once, and that was against Texas A&M. That was an overtime game, a game where they fell apart. So they have been susceptible to allowing people to score against them. But, look, I think Georgia's better. I don't think it's an easy deal, but I think they are better. And I think we're going to see, that over time, they will probably be able to grind out a win. But it's not going to be easy. I mean, these running backs for the Hogs are averaging almost 7 yards a carry. It's crazy. That's a lot. That's a tremendous amount. And then they can really, when they want to, they can really throw it. Brandon Allen's only thrown 2 interceptions. He's almost got 1,000 yards on the year. Now, last year he was much more herky-jerky. I think he had 14 touchdowns and 13 interceptions in his career up until this point. Last year he was 13. He had 13 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. So he is playing better, Allen. But, Arkansas, you got to wonder if they get down if they'll say, hey, we just can't push through in these conference games. But I mean, I think Georgia's going to get all they need from the Hogs. 54 some odd thousand people in Little Rock. That's a lot. Actually, that's the smallest Georgia will play against. But I have been told it's a nutty crowd. It just won't be very loud. It'll be a little bit like playing at Mississippi State back in the day, or playing. It'll be like playing at Georgia Tech. So it'll be something like that. You'll have a lot of people screaming and yelling at you. I guess I don't think Arkansas really hates Georgia, and vice versa very much. I don't think they really care. But this is a different crowd in Little Rock. It's a little bit different crowd than in Fayetteville. Fayetteville, I thought Fayetteville was a relatively tough place to play. I don't know why they don't play there more often, but hey, whatever. Hogs are allowing almost 40% conversion on third downs. By the same token, they're converting almost half of their third down conversions. That's another thing to keep in mind. So and it's been tough. They've only allowed 5 sacks the whole year, but a lot of the bulk of that's because they're running, right? They have run the ball 4 times more than Georgia, 268 times. Georgia's run at 264. Georgia's attempted 146 passes. The Hogs have attempted 147. So, we're talking about Georgia, in theory, without Todd Gurley. That's the issue. I think if Todd were playing, Georgia would be, instead of a 3.5 or 4-point favorite, they'd probably be 6, 5.5, 6, something like that. That'd be a little bit more, you'd expect them to win a little bit more than that. All right, let's get back to these other questions. Look at Arkansas has played better. They played A&M to overtime. Probably should have won that game and lost. They had a week off. They played Bama, missed an extra point, and that game's tied going to overtime. If Georgia wins this game, they're in prime condition to win the East. Prime position, to win the East. How good? Okay, UGA Dog Forever 08 says, how good do you think Nick Chubb can be? Who does he compare to? When do you think Sony and Keith will be back? I expect Sony back for Florida. Keith, you would imagine he would be back for Florida, but I don't know. Okay, he could have played in theory this week, but let's just let Keith kind of get back when he can get back. Sony, I do expect by Florida. How good do I think Nick Chubb can be? Well, I was talking to somebody yesterday. I think it's gonna be tough for Nick to be good by himself like he was all the time. He needs Sony, and he needs some other people too. I was saying to somebody earlier, I don't know if I'm just used to seeing Todd or what, but Nick Chubb looks small compared, when he's out there. And basically the response back was, well, no, you're used to seeing Todd. So my concern more than anything would be that, Nick needs a little help out there. He can't run it 38, 36 times. That's just crazy. And he doesn't have it didn't seem like the other day, it doesn't seem like he's had the breakaway speed like he did against Clemson and South Carolina. We haven't seen that lately. But I wouldn't turn in Nick Chubb for anybody. Recently he was basically their number 3 running back, and he was just thrashing Missouri. So if he keeps it up, he'll be in the top 10 in the SEC in terms of total yards, because he had 130 something, and he's had 50 and 70 and whatever. So he's just on the outside of the top 10. But someone said he looked like Emmitt Smith the other day. I have a hard time with those things. He's not as big as Todd. He naturally is. You can compare him to Todd because they're somewhat similar. But he just seems like a little bowling ball out there, man. He's tough to deal with, bring down. Rick Ite asks, Dean, in your opinion, why does Georgia flip-flop players from one side of the ball to the other? I get moving about at once, but back and forth seems to be detrimental to their career. Example of that comes to Keontae Tripp, was not good. Richard Samuel was stiff. Malcolm Mitchell is a wide receiver. They only moved him over there to corner for a small amount of time because they had no corners. Brendan Langley looks like he's going to be a corner from here on out too. They moved him over to receiver because they had tons of DBs. Now they don't. Obviously, some of these guys come back to be contributors, but don't you believe they'd be better off left at one position their entire career? Obviously. I mean, but it's a team. I mean, you've got to help the team. J.J. Green has played now. He came in as a DB. He was moved to running back. He moved from running back to DB. Now he's back to running back. I mean, I think if you are a football player, like Richard just wasn't that great, as it turns out. I mean, he was stiff. He was perfectly fine. Nothing wrong with Richard. He played great his senior year. I thought he played pretty well his junior year. He probably went out there a little too early, but hey, I mean, no big deal. Keontae Tripp, just because you got the body doesn't mean you can play. And so, Malcolm played DB at a time when Georgia needed some DBs because they had 3 of them suspended or whatever it was. So those guys are just doing what you got to do. I mean, nobody said that about Hines Ward. Hines Ward seemed to, be okay. He's an NFL Hall of Famer probably. He played 3 positions at Georgia. So I don't know. David Pollock played multiple positions. He played defensive tackle, then he played defensive end. Now you're talking about switching from one side to the next. I don't know. I don't think it's a huge deal. I mean, if Tom about to switch to defense right now, maybe that would help Georgia. Maybe it wouldn't. I mean, who knows? But for me, that's not a huge deal. You got to get guys who can play multiple positions. Sometimes they play both offense and defense, but typically they just play one. I don't necessarily think it's a detriment. Like for instance, Johnny O'Neal has been at Georgia for 2 years. He's not smelled the field. Now, if he were told, hey, you need to go play running back, fullback, maybe that'd be something you look at. Robert Edwards switched from DB to running back. I mean, it paid off in huge ways for him. So, sometimes the guys get moved around. A lot of times guys get moved around because they're not good. I mean, you're talking about Charles White did that. Coleman Watson did that. I mean, usually it's because the guys are not performing that great, period. And the coaches are trying to figure out where in the world to stick them. A.J. Harmon. So I'm starting to rattle off some names now that I think about it that usually they're not great players. And they're just trying to figure out how to get them on the field one way or the other. I'm trying to see if I missed any other questions. I get the feeling I didn't. This week's game up there or over there at Arkansas is going to be a challenge. But I do think Georgia's better. I think they are playing with a fair amount of confidence right this second. I think they felt like they gave one away to South Carolina. And look at this defense is the reason for the confidence. They're only allowing 100 yards rushing a game. If they can keep that under 200 this week, they'll probably win. They're only allowing 18 points a game. They've thrown 2 shutouts this season in 6 games. The pass defense, which sucks, is barely allowing 200 yards a game. It's better than Alabama's pass defense. So it seems to be coming along pretty good, but it is based on the defense, which is playing great now suddenly. And, will Todd come back? My expectation is that he will not play against Arkansas, but he will play this season. My expectation is that he will play against Florida, but certainly I think he will play against Auburn at a minimum. That would be 4-game suspension. So, all right, Dean Legge Show for the week of Georgia's game with Arkansas. It's now Thursday. We don't know any more than we did on Monday about Todd Gurley's return.